Carly, and I'm Bo, and today she's come in to have her metabolism tested, and so we thought you guys watching might want to know a little bit more about what this entails and why you would even want to go about getting your metabolism tested. So what was the reason that you wanted to get your metabolism tested?
So I've been so far on my fitness journey so far, but I've hit a massive plateau. And so this to me means that I need to change something about the way I work out, the way I eat, and so I need to know where I need to be. So I need to know how much I'm burning every day in order to adjust accordingly. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, cool. Well, that's great because she pointed out that she needs to know what changes to make with her food and with exercise, and that's one of the reasons that this test is so important. Is it actually tells us exactly how many calories she's really burning every day. So it won't be a guess. Usually this is done with a formula of some kind as far as how the most common way that people try to do this. So if you go on a calorie counting site or something, you'll enter in your weight and age and things like that. And it's plugging these into a calculation and hoping to make a good guess.
Right.
But that's what it is really. It's a guess, and there are many other factors that influence metabolism. Such as types of food in our diet, certain vitamins and minerals have a big influence on metabolism, stress, certain health disorders, things like hypo or hyperthyroidism. So from this test, we'll actually be able to work out if you have a high metabolism, if you have a low metabolism, or if you have what would just be defined as normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, so that'll be cool. So sometimes if someone takes this test, it may mean literally if they had hypothyroidism, it may mean it'd be worth talking with the doctor and they'd want to check it out. But the point is, the cool thing about this test is that it is, it's going to tell us scientifically, like accurately, what you really are.
Sure.
So that's kind of cool. So we don't have to guess about it anymore.
Yeah, thank goodness. No more guesswork. That's awesome. So this test, you see like on the internet all the time, people with like hooked up to machines running on a treadmill. This is not the same thing.
No. So very similar how the two tests are using a device to measure energy output or energy expenditure, how much energy your body's using. And the test you're referring to is called VO2 max. And this is actually, we can conduct something similar, a similar type of test. So this device that we're going to be using today can be used to measure how your metabolism changes in response to exercise. And so what's cool about this is with this device, what it's actually going to tell us is not only how many calories you burn at rest, so you'll be resting, we'll have you lay in a comfortable position as we take the test, but it's also going to tell us how many calories you are burning during physical activity.
Gotcha.
So, and this will be unique from one person to another as well. And what's neat about this is it can actually give us insights into the how much exercise she should be doing in order to reach the goals that she's trying to pursue. How much have you lost so far? 50.
Yeah.
So 50 pounds. So that means that her body has changed quite a bit from where she started. And it's too bad we didn't have one where it was way back then, right? So we can just kind of see. But yeah, so that means that things have changed. One of the most important principles is that, like Carly understands, is that you have to keep changing things in order to keep everything kind of moving. So that's cool. Carly came in fasted today, and she hasn't done any physical activity. The test has to be done where she's rested. She hasn't eaten anything or done any exercise. Because it's interesting that when we see the things that primarily influence metabolism is your physical activity level, your diet, and so food will increase your metabolism. Every time you eat a meal, your metabolism will go up. However, it may not necessarily go up to completely negate the food that we've eaten, or else we could just eat all the time. Right? But unfortunately, that's not the way it works. I know, exactly. So, do you have any other questions, do you think?
I've been reading a little bit about this now. Obviously, my macros are very important to me.
Yeah.
Is this going to have like any kind of like information about where my macros should be?
Yeah, it can. So how macros would play into it is there are. So one thing is we know that when the test is conducted, it's actually going to tell us what your fuel source is right now. So that's kind of interesting. Is it not only is going to tell us how many calories you're burning, but it's actually going to tell us what you're burning.
Interesting.
Yeah. So because you've been fasting during the night or up until this point, ideally what should have happened is your body should be running on mostly fat right now, right? So the device should tell us if everything's right, it should say you're burning mostly fat. Carbohydrate becomes a fuel source usually in the early stages of fasting, but typically starts to taper off and your body starts using mostly fat. So, however, when we conduct the test in a fasted state and the body is using still lots of carbohydrate or a carbohydrate fat blend, this might indicate that there are tweaks we can make with the diet or macros. Macros, she's referring to protein, fat, carbohydrate are the main macros. And many times you can manipulate your macros to get a greater thermic effect. You can boost your metabolism a bit. So for example, we know that the thermic effect of digesting protein is quite a bit higher than that of, say, fat. You're not going to get a huge boost in metabolism when you eat a fatty meal, but your metabolism will go up quite a bit with a protein-rich meal. And we also get a pretty good thermic effect from carbohydrates. And this also plays into not just macros, but micronutrients. So there are certain micronutrients that can be manipulated to a degree to help increase metabolism. So, for example, we think about the thyroid. When you think of, you ever heard of a goiter? Right. It's a problem with thyroid. So this was found to be due to an insufficient consumption of iodine in the diet, right? So if a person is having a diet that doesn't have sufficient vitamins and minerals in it, it can directly impair metabolism. So one study was done looking at vitamin C intake, and what they found was that people who worked out with low serum levels of vitamin C would burn significantly less fat. I believe it was 30% less fat than those who were working out with high serum levels of vitamin C. So even though they may have had sufficient macronutrients and everything else was normal, just the fact that they weren't getting sufficient vitamins and minerals was actually causing their body to be impaired in its ability to burn body fat. Wow. So,
interesting.
Yeah, isn't that neat?
Yeah, it's awesome. So, okay, what does this thing do? Like, how does it even work?
Okay, yeah. So basically, what we do is we have a device, and this will be plugged into our actual tester here, and you'll be breathing into this device. And we'll have to make sure that your nose is pitched shut tight so that only what you're breathing in and what you're inhaling, or are breathing out and what you're inhaling, are measured through the device. So the device needs to actually measure what you're consuming for oxygen, but it also is going to be measuring what you're excreting in carbon dioxide.
Gotcha.
All right, so the reason that it does this and how it's able to measure energy expenditure is because our body is just almost like a wood stove. It takes fuels and then it burns them up. And as it does this, it has to have a certain amount of oxygen coming into, let's say, the stove, so to speak, in order for the fire to work. But then it also has a certain amount of wastes that are excreted. And so scientists have been able to work out that the waste that we excrete are a direct measure of the type of fuel and the quantity of fuel that we're burning. And the amount of oxygen that we consume also plays into this. So, you think if you blow on a fire and the fire just starts to, or you open up the vent on your wood stove, and as that air comes in, the fire really starts to incinerate. So we know that oxygen and increasing oxygen is really, really good at helping the body metabolize fuels at a much higher rate. And this is what helps explain why high-intensity exercise is so good for fat loss, because it literally, think about how you're breathing and how your body's working. It's just causing that internal fire to just be cranked way, way, way up. And that can have effects that can last throughout the whole day.
Awesome. Anything else that I should know before?
Really the main thing is just that when the test is conducted, you want to try to stay relaxed. And when you're breathing into the device, it is, you have a little valve that allows air in, and then a little valve that allows the air to go into the device that you're excreting. And what you want to do is just try to stay as relaxed as possible. I know that when you're breathing into the little device and your nose is pinched, they can feel a little constrictive. But that means you're going to want to just kind of take slow, nice deep breaths. It's not like a breathalyzer, so you don't have to try to force air into it. It's not try to blow as hard as you can. It's just try to relax and breathe. And what we'll actually do is we'll do a practice session. And actually, in fact, this device is not even going to let us conduct the real test until we practice a practice session, just to make sure that your breathing is relaxed and that no air is escaping from around the little mouthpiece.
Cool. And how long does the session last?
It should. This will be really quick. Typically, as long as the breathing is up practices, as long as the device says our practices are good, then we'll be able to go right into it. Maybe 5-10 minutes max.
Awesome.
If the device says breathing erratically, it may say practice again. And so hopefully we'll be able to pass right through quickly and get it going.
Cool.
All right. So I'm just going to enter in some information here, and then we'll get you set to conduct the test in just a couple minutes.
Sounds good.
Go ahead and start the meeting. Almost there. Good.
All right.
You are all set.
Woohoo! 2 deep breaths. All right. All right.
All right. So your reading is coming up as low.
Interesting.
Low metabolism. So that.
I knew it. No, I didn't.
Yeah. Your resting metabolic rate is 1,340 calories.
Really?
Yep, which is really quite low. It should be closer to like 16, 17, maybe even 1,800 calories.
Sure.
Yep. So that would definitely qualify as something worth maybe getting checked out, just to double check, to see. Right now, your energy source too is a fat and carb burn.
Interesting.
So you're burning carbs and fat. So that usually means that if in a fasted state, if the body's still burning carbs, it's good that it's burning fat too.
Right.
But it means that it's having a harder time burning fat.
Right.
And wanting to use carbs as more of a fuel source.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, based upon your activity level, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple things here to show you, kind of give you some insights as far as your current activity level and how that plays with your exercise. Let's go to goals. So let's say that your weight target, let's set it at a let's set it at I'm trying to think if we did earlier. Did we do?
Oh, I have like a target.
You have a target goal?
190.
190?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so right now what they're doing is they're giving us a number of, as far as, I haven't entered in activity yet, so we'll see how that affects this. But at 190 target with a 250 calorie deficit a day.
Right.
So rather than a 500 calorie deficit, a small deficit a day, they would project your goal weight would be 812.17 if you were consuming 1,548 calories a day.
Okay.
Based upon, now we're going to enter an activity though, because this is based upon your current activity of as far as your light, normal physical activity during the day.
Right.
So we're going to add in your workouts as well.
Right.
And this will give us some insights too as far as your calorie.
Actual target calorie range.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So as far as your type of workout, which I kind of know too, but I'm
You
gonna
know a little bit about that.
we have light, which is like normal walking, light workout, yoga, which we're not gonna go with. We have moderate, which is brisk walking, bicycling for leisure. We have intense, jogging, hiking, cycling, bodybuilding, and then we have very intense. I think that we could go very intense, but I think it'd be better for us to be more moderate and go intense. Yeah. So we'll go there, and so once we've added in your activity level, now we need to add in the amount of activity you get a week at that particular type of level.
Yeah, that would be 4 days.
4 days. So basically, would you say about 4 hours a week roughly?
That would be.
And no other exercise outside of that?
I mean, a
little
bit,
yeah,
but not as intense.
Okay. So I'm going to enter that in. And we'll see, as we enter in that amount of time, we see your calories change as far as what you can eat. So it's interesting, like if I were to hike your activity up to, say, 6-7 hours a week, you would be able to eat a lot more food.
Right, absolutely.
But based upon right now at 4 hours, your recommended calorie intake is 1,633 calories.
Okay,
which probably is, what, do you remember what your other was?
Ooh,
by any chance, like on your
like on my
MyFitnessPal?
MyFitnessPal, I just moved it from 1,700 to 1,400 a couple days ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was that 1,700 though?
Yeah, so it was at 1,700. Yeah.
And was that though? I'm curious. Did you had you set the exercise level to like really low?
I think I had actually. I think I had set it to like moderate.
Right. So I'm wondering if you had if you had set it to what the actual things
Right.
it told you to
Maybe
set it
it
at,
would
it
be
probably would be telling you to eat way
Yeah,
more
because I
food.
remember having done that, and it was like eat 2,500 calories a day. And I was like,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound
Right,
right. I'm
right.
not doing that.
Right.
Yeah, so I know, like, yeah, obviously my fitness pal only knows so much about you. This is more
Yes.
interesting to me though, because it's telling me to eat more than like my resting metabolic rate, which is
Yeah.
that's not what I expected.
Yeah. Basically, what it has done is resting metabolic rate is telling you that if you just laid on that couch all day
Right.
and did nothing,
Did nothing.
you're gonna still burn 1,340 calories, right?
Right.
But when we added in at the beginning, when I asked you, your activity during the day, it's based upon the fact that if you get up out of that couch and just walk across the room,
Right.
you're gonna be your calorie expenditure is gonna go up from
Right.
that. So from that, they're able to work out that a little bit higher than your actual resting metabolic rate.
Right.
And then what we did from there is we then added additional exercise, that your structured exercise. If you look at what makes up your metabolism, they say it generally falls into 3 primary realms. There's your BMR, your RMR, your resting metabolic rate.
Right.
There's and that's just whatever your heart and brain and organs need to do what they do.
Sure.
Then there's your what they call TEPA, which is the thermic effect of physical activity.
Okay.
And it falls under structured physical activity, but non-structured physical activity. So
Okay.
that would be just bouncing your knee, right?
Right.
Like right now, I just saw you're
I do
wiggling
this all
your
the
yeah,
time.
yeah, which is good because that's burning more calories, right?
Right.
But that accounts for part of the energy expenditure during the day. And then they have TEF, which is thermic effective feeding. So when
Okay.
you're eating, you're going to be also having an impact on metabolism of those.
Interesting.
And it's those 3 elements together that make up what they call TDEE, total daily energy expenditure, or your metabolism. So when we've entered in your activity level, they're saying that based upon the activity level that you're doing right now, you're burning in those 4 hours of activity about 1,252 calories.
Okay.
So if you were to divide that by 4, which I don't know, I don't have my calculator in front of me,
Yeah,
but
it's like 400 or something.
400
like
something
that.
like
Something like that.
so they're getting a good, so it'd be about 300,
Yeah,
right? 310-ish or
Yeah,
so, maybe
12,
12, yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, so they're saying that that's what your metabolism based on that intensity level would burn in that particular workout. So it's kind of interesting because many people would think, hour of exercise, I must be burning 600, 700 calories, right?
Especially something like boot camp, it feels like you're burning so much.
Yes, yeah, but based upon your current metabolic rate,
Interesting.
they're saying that you're burning about 300-ish.
Huh.
So that means that when you look at your food and say exercise,
Right.
You look and say, well, what can I stand to make the most changes with? Do I want to eat less right now? Based
Or
on your
move more.
current, yeah, exactly. You're at 1633, and that's with a small deficit.
Right.
If we were cutting 500 calories, that would be even less food.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, so those are the main insights as far as those kinds of elements.
Interesting.
The thing that I think is probably the most important thing would really be because metabolism came out so low. I think it might be worth actually getting that.
Getting
The
it
first
checked
step
out.
would be really getting that checked first.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually super good to know because
Yeah.
that would, lead to a lot of answers about my lifelong struggle with
Yes,
this problem.
exactly.
That it might not just be me.
Right. Yes, exactly. See? So.
Okay, cool. So what does the whole combo burning fat and carbohydrate thing tell you about my macros? Or
So
does it say anything
one
about
thing it can tell us is that if you look at studies on this as far as when they study, usually they'll split people into 2 groups, and what they'll do is they'll take what they call the naturally lean, the person who never has had a weight issue, never struggled with their weight, they're just like real skinny, and they claim that they can eat whatever they want. And so they'll take this as a separate group, and then they'll study someone who has always said, I always had a weight issue, always. And one thing that they'll find is almost all of the people who've had a problem with their weight have a harder time burning fat for fuel. And the people who are real skinny, it's that's almost always their body's primary fuel source,
Interesting.
right? So it's almost like no matter what they eat, their body is really running on fat. And that's why they make such great endurance athletes, is because they're able to tap into a fuel source that holds them over for a long, long period of time.
Right.
Whereas those who are running more on carbohydrates, they find that they have to oftentimes they need a fuel with carbohydrates while they're going, or they bonk just because they're having a harder time tapping into their own fat stores for energy. And so they're ones that are, you know, taking the little gels and
Right,
drinking
yeah.
the sugar and all that for even shorter duration physical activity. So when they've studied this and begin to try to figure out what causes it, part of it has to do with the weight itself. Something about the weight is, and this is where you think about like diabetes or insulin resistance and things like this. These are all like issues with glucose metabolism or the cells being able to get glucose into the cell properly. So in one sense, it's the weight, but in another sense, something else, you know, the idea is that something else early in life contribute to it even before the weight was there,
Sure.
right? So one thing that they have tried to do is go ahead and try to tweak food a bit to try to get a person more able to burn fat more efficiently. And there's a few ways to go about doing it. One way is carbohydrate manipulation.
Right.
So basically the idea is if the body doesn't have as many carbohydrates to consume, it's going to have to be forced around something else.
Right.
The only problem with this type of strategy is that sometimes what we'll see is if someone does it, so let's say you were going a low carb diet,
Sure.
what can actually happen is it can suppress your metabolism even further. So even though your body's burning more fat for fuel, you can actually lower your metabolic rate as a result of prolonged carbohydrate dieting. So sometimes a strategy is cycling. So you might have, you know, a couple of days low carb, but then you'd have a couple of days high carb, back, or at least back to normal.
Sure.
You know. And meanwhile, what you would be doing, you'd still be keeping on all those days yourself in that calorie deficit.
Right.
All you'd be doing is adding in
changing the macros.
Exactly, changing those macros up. So you almost be as simple as, you know, some days you're like, I'm really just going to keep my carbohydrates mostly just from vegetables. They're very low glycemic and have minimal impact on blood sugar. And on other days, I'll have more like fruits and starches and things like that. But what you probably wouldn't want to do is to go on a prolonged, especially not without first getting your metabolism checked.
Sure.
Because it may simply be that the doctor is like, we need to, you know, there may be a medical thing behind it.
Sure.
And that might be the very thing that gets you to just be able to continue eating normally
Right.
and speed up metabolism a bit.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that'll be fun to figure out.
I know,
But at
now
least
I'm
I
curious
know,
too.
But at least
Yeah.
I like, you know, now like know that, you know, it's, you know, there's something maybe a little tweaky there and it needs to be altered and we'll figure that out.
Right, yeah. And then you'll come back for an update so we can like, everybody else wants to know now too.
Medical history.
Everybody's like waiting in suspense for the...
Suddenly turn into like a series.
Yes, exactly. That'll be cool.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for doing this.
You're
This was
welcome.
very
Thank you
enlightening,
for coming
actually.
in. You're very welcome.
Good stuff.
You guys.
Bye.